This is Bumping Into, where we have interesting conversations with people from all walks of life.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Bumping Into. This is part of a series of Bumping Into shows called Bumping Into That Sound. So let me explain the original concept behind the Bumping Into That Sound series. I wanted to collect a bunch of musicians that were well known in their field for having a particular sound or being extremely well known in their craft. Then taking them and doing a short series of interviews that basically would go into how they started, what was their influences, and then across the aspects that make up the majority of their sound. Predominantly, I guess, their live sound, which the reason for that is that tends to be what fans most aspire to. As a guitarist or a musician, if you admire someone, it's the way they sound live that tends to really resonate and what you try to duplicate when you're playing along at home. So that was my original concept. It didn't quite work out that way. What started to happen is the conversations became too good to compress and cut and form into a one or two combined episode. So rather than, I suppose, strip away what I really thought was important and interesting, I thought what I'll do is I'll give them their own space and they'll just become a regular episode, but they'll be part of a Bumping Into That Sound concept where it's about the musician and their sound. This is what I've come up with, and this is the first part. This is the first episode. There was a couple of people that really stood out. One, because they were great conversations, but they were also extremely giving of their time and their information. And a couple of them were just a sheer joy to talk to and spend, if it was half an hour with. So I want to start this one off with Joel Hoekstra. A lot of people are going to know Joel as the guitarist for Whitesnake. He's been in Nightranger. He's also the guitarist for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, one of the best guitarists that you're going to hear. But not only that, there's more to Joel than that. Joel is often referred to as one of the genuine nice guys of the music business, and that comes through on this conversation, this interview with him. He's extremely talented, got a great, big, tough rock sound, your signature Les Paul into a Marshall, turned up, lot of gain. Anyone that's into that sound is going to love this episode because Joel goes into the equipment he uses, the style of playing he has, all the details that as, a young musician starting out or getting interested in, you live by those words, you live by the detail of what strings does the player use, what pickups does he have, what amp is he running. And that's what I've tried to capture for people that are, into it to get something from it. So I hope you enjoy it. It's a great interview with some good information, and I'll catch you on the other side. Hey, Joel, how you going?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
My original ideas changed a little bit on what I was doing with this series of podcasts, only because some of the stuff that I've got is too good to condense into 5-6 players in one episode. So I'm going to strip them out and have them singly. So that's sort of where I'm sort of going.
Okay, sure.
I know you've said in the past AC/DC was one of your big influences as to why you started playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my parents are classical musicians, so I grew up with music around the house like 24/7. I mean, they're both very, very talented, and they had me playing really young, and I didn't really take to it. But glad I went through the process. Gave me a good sense of pitch and rhythm and reading music at an early age, and sort of internalized, I think, a lot of what helped jumpstart me on guitar. But really, what launched guitar for sure was it was actually more of a visual thing because it was right when MTV had come out. So MTV started, and I don't know if you remember those days, but there was literally 5 or 6 videos that would just rotate. And oddly enough, I can't even recall which AC/DC song it was, but one of them was an AC/DC song. And I remember looking at Angus Young and going, that right there, that's what I want to do. That guy's the coolest person I've ever seen in my life. I want to be him.
and he's still going.
Absolutely. And you've never seen him take 5 minutes off, have you? I
No,
mean, 5 seconds off. I mean, tip of the cap to him for sure. It's
yeah,
like that, not one iota of footage of him looking like he's phoning it in. He's,
no, no, that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
incredibly dedicated performer and, a terrific guitarist, obviously, as well. So.
And can you identify if now you're clearly, you look the part of rock, you play the part of rock, you're at the top of the rock career that anyone could hope for. If you go back, do you remember that point in time where you thought, pre playing the big stages, where you've then gone, I've made it. Now this is where I want to be. All of a sudden it clicked, and this is it.
Everything built so gradually for me that I never really had that one defining moment.
Right.
So it sounds um, not grateful enough when I say I've had a series of baby steps or small breaks that have built my career because that minimizes the impact of joining Whitesnake and things of that nature. So sometimes I like to describe it as a series of bigger breaks. But
Right.
uh, the way it built for me was just kind of working my way up through the Chicago suburban scene, basically, gigging with any band possible and just constantly playing guitar, constantly teaching. I had 70 students a week, and
Wow.
I just kind of gradually found success. The first time I became a full-time performer, I felt like that was a moment. I felt like, joining Kathy Richardson's band in Chicago felt like a moment for me because she was a very popular local artist who, nowadays sings with Jefferson Starship and does really well for herself. But that was a moment of going like, hey, this is cool. I'm in a popular band and people actually want a picture with me or my autograph. And
Yeah.
so that was a moment of feeling like, hey, that's more than I ever thought I'd do. And then moving to New York and being a part of the show Love Janis about Janis Joplin, that was when I became a full-time performer. And I thought, wow, I never thought I'd see the day. Like I wasn't just like a guitar teacher who did some other stuff, gigs.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so, it's all these breaks along the way. And then if I gave you the Reader's Digest of the build, it's from there going with the Turtles and Big Brother and the Holding Company. Um, Acts like World Stage and Scrap Metal led to Nightranger. Along that time, being a part of Pit Stuff led to Rock of Ages. Put those together, those led to Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Put it all together led to Whitesnake. David taking time off led to Cher. So it's like all these kind of, it's always just kind of been
Yeah.
like all these additions, but there was never that one defining moment.
If you talk about your sound, is there an album or a piece of work or something that if someone said to you, well, show me or what is it that you define your own sound as? Is there a body of work that you could put that label on?
Not really. I mean, that's tough for me as well
Yeah.
because what happened to me is when the 90s grunge movement swept in was like right when I got out of guitar school. So like right
Right.
when I was embarking upon, my musical career, which is younger Joel spent all his time working on like all the Guitar Hero stuff, like listening to all the Satriani and Steve Vai and Steve
Yeah.
Morse and Dave Malmsteen and all those instrumental albums and always sort of maybe um, placed myself in terms of one of those hopefuls of being that type of player. And then um, it so happened that the 90s rendered all of that like, completely useless. It was like,
Yeah,
you
it's an
know,
odd time, wasn't it? Yeah.
so what that did was that really opened me up as a musician just to being open to make myself valuable in any type of playing situation. And I think in general that really increased my love for music as a whole. So I have been a part of lots of different things like over the years that would surprise people, like when I mentioned the Turtles and things like that. I mean, I played bass in the Turtles for like
Oh,
two
wow.
years. So things like that usually that's not the standard trajectory of like, say, a guitarist in Whitesnake, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that guy must have been shredding in his bedroom the whole time and then
Yeah.
just stuff in Whitesnake. So, I mean, I did a lot of different gigs. I was in acid jazz bands. I've played in wedding bands. I've played in hip hop bands. I mean, I've done like all kinds of different stuff. I've done jazz duo gigs, and I've played classical gigs, like background as a classical guitarist at social events and things like that. I mean, all kinds of bizarre things that people. So I
Yeah.
don't have a typical story. So I'm on one hand, that makes me extremely hard to summarize in like, hey, this one body of work sums up everything I can do.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Yeah, yeah,
so, the thing that sums me up more than anything is the philosophy of like the daily work, working hard and just like going after it every day and trying to stay productive. So that's kind of, and that's who I am as a guitarist and who I am as a person and as a musician. Is
yeah,
that person who works hard at it every day and like tries to move forward and be productive.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, for me, yeah, and it's always that point in time where someone, I guess, maybe finds you, jumps on board, and they sort of, I guess, will attach that that sound to you. And for me, I mean, a lot of your work has that big bottom end grunt. It's a huge guitar sound. It's not. Um, I suppose it sounds live. Your work sounds very live. It's got that real explosive sound to it where it doesn't sound like someone's boxed it in and restrained it. It's like you've got this guitar that's just full of life and screaming, um, through the soundtrack as such, I personally love that sound. I think it's the greatest sound, and that and a V8 engine. It's sort of the pinnacle of the best sounds that you can hear.
Well, what happens is when you make a name for yourself in certain situations, that's what people come to you for.
Yeah.
So like in the old days, let's say I got hired to play on somebody's track before I was a part of Nightranger or Whitesnake, I would just play entirely for the song. And in fact, if you did try and cram in any guitar heroics, it was typically frowned upon.
Oh, wow.
Nowadays, if people hire me to play on their track and I don't give them some of that, they're kind of disappointed. So like if I play totally for the song and play like a session guitarist, they say, "Hey, where's the ripping solo, man? Come
Yeah.
on."
Yeah.
So you kind of get you kind of have these expectations placed on you about what's why people are hiring you or why they come to you. So that's interesting. Just I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. It just is. That's the way it is. It's obviously it's cool. Anybody wants me to play on their track, but I'm also the type of guitarist that would be very happy just to play the right thing for the song and what serves the song the best, or as long as things are on a high level. That's what I get off on. I,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would rather play rhythm guitar, G, C, D all night long on a really high level than play extremely difficult music and, in a basement somewhere and
Yeah.
not, I enjoy playing music with great musicians on a high level.
Yeah. The master of your craft, and that's where it shines through because you do come across as that absolute professional. If we talk about so for me, a couple of bodies of work that you've got, and even if you to your most recent stuff that you've done with Iconic and that sound that you've got there, if we narrow in on that sound and talk about what you use to achieve that sound. I mean, even if you talk about the Whitesnake, the stuff you've done with them and the live sound, I'm guessing it's quite a similar sort of setup, those two sounds.
I mean, the biggest thing with me that I really, somewhere around 2002, evolved into a Les Paul player. And that's like, and what's funny is it just took me a long time to get to that point. I grew up as a kid in the 80s doing all the Floyd Rose stuff. I grew up, Kramers and Jacksons and all that kind of stuff. And then being in Chicago, the blues was such a big thing that I started to do more of like the Strats and Tellys, and those were my main
Oh, yeah.
guitars. And then it really took a long time because I used to go, Les Pauls, those things are always out of tune. I don't get it, like, and then finally I got a Les Paul and I went, I am an idiot. Like this is home. And so that's the main thing with me, I think, that from album to album, that's kind of become one of the stronger things of my playing identity is that I'm a Les Paul player and I love playing them. I
Yeah.
love the sound of them. I love the feel of them. Um, so I find myself most at home there, and that's the one common thread from depending on gig to gig. Sometimes stuff is modeling, sometimes stuff is real amps. I'm a big fan of Marshall or Friedman for amplifiers. Used some other ones that are really happening too. Mezza Barba, Victory. Those are all great amplifiers that I enjoy using. And when it comes to virtual stuff, it can be the 11 rack, or it can be Fractal Axe Effects, or it can be my Atomic Amplifier, Studio Devil. I use that quite a bit. So, but the common thread that you'll find is the Les Paul.
Les Paul.
That's it, yeah.
And do you change the pickups, or are they, the factory fitted pickups?
I'm a stock guy. I'm like
wow.
if a guitar doesn't play good and sound good, why do I own it guy? So,
Right. Okay. So you don't want to have to go tinkering. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been that guy. I guess I'm not like a handyman, so to speak. Like I don't get off on let me take these pickups out and swap these in, etc. I'll just be like, that guitar I don't like the sound of that, so I'm just going to get rid of it.
Oh, okay. And I mean, a lot of people associate, when they think Les Paul, Marshall, and there's a lot of music and people say, oh, it's just a Les Paul straight into a Marshall stack turned up. And that's the golden sound. And tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like when you do that, a lot of the time, and it can sound a bit thin and they sound a bit angry. And you often need something in front, some sort of pedal or something to warm it up a bit. Because Marshalls, while they're the signature of that rock sound, sometimes they do have that, they tend to thin out a bit and sound you need something to fill up the sound a bit more beforehand. Is there any pedals that you typically always use to achieve that big booming bottom end grunt sound that you've got?
The boost pedals that I use the most, out of sheer laziness, just because I'm not a huge gearhead, are my Full Tone Full Drive 2. I've owned for a long time. So I typically use that if I'm going to do like a fly date gig. I like using 2000s for Marshall. I like it, which is also not cool to say. You're supposed to like always talk about plexis and all this stuff. But
the JCM 800.
For me, I play a lot of high gain music where you have to have pinch harmonics readily available, and so it all depends on the style of music you're playing as well. That's a big part of it. But Whitesnake, you have to be able to get a squeal when you go for a pinch harmonic. It has to be there. You can't have some kind of it's got a woo. You need
exactly that. Yes,
have the high gain. So the more modern Marshalls, which is not always cool to say. A lot of people are all vintage, but I like the way a lot of the new stuff sounds. Even the JVM, I've used those when I record my stuff for Guitar World. They always have that. The lessons and whatnot. They have a JVM there, and I'm always like, I like the sound of this thing, honestly.
Yeah.
So Marshalls push it with the full tone. And with my Friedman, with Whitesnake, I pushed that with an old MXR custom audio electronics. It's kind of got two sides. It's got a clean boost and an adding a distortion side. Right. And so that's what I used to push the front end on those.
And I'm guessing,
and so much of it has to do with cabinet throw. It's like like having when you hear Angus Young, or he has not a lot of gain, but there's so much sustain.
Yep.
He's got 9 cabinets on stage, angled in every position, with his amps. The head's all set to like 7 or 8. So he's, no matter where you stand, you're going to get your guitar's going to sing without a lot of gain. So a lot of it comes down to that too, like how much you're creating all the even order harmonics of the pickups actually, getting hit with the frequencies that you're throwing out. So unfortunately nowadays it's almost the norm to like have some kind of ISO cab or something where that's not going to occur.
Yeah. And the other thing too is obviously volume plays a big part. Volume shapes the sound, and it's hard for a lot of guys to, especially if you're at home and you've got a Marshall there, they sound great when they're being pushed, when they're loud. So obviously for yourself being live, you would have that big stage volume as well, and it feels and it really has that presence about it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely stage volume and also mix volume. Mix volume has a tremendous amount to do with it too. I mean, it's like you can take the greatest guitar tone, and if you undermix it, it's not going to sound like the greatest guitar tone. A lot of
Yeah.
times people go, "Man, that guitar sounds good," and it's just really because it's loud in the mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is a big thing, you know. It's how things are mixed has a lot to do with it.
And what gauge strings do you typically use?
11s.
11s,
And
okay.
that again, that's kind of a laziness thing. Like when I use tens, I used to break the high E on occasion on gigs, and I'd go, enough of that.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to break any strings on gigs, so I switched to 11s, and so regardless of what scale, like a lot of people are like, oh, I use tens on a Strat and 11s on
Right.
a. I'm like, I'm too lazy for all of that, so I just get like 11 through 48, and however it feels on each individual guitar that's
If that's the
what I
way it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's 11 through 48.
That's yeah, I mean really your setup is it's like you've got this bulletproof core. You've got, a Les Paul into say JCM 2000, you're using, your gauge of strings, you don't have many pedals. It's obviously you can turn up and blow them away without all the bells and whistles and suitcases full of stuff to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be the guy with the ginormo pedal board for sure.
Yeah.
I think, everybody goes through their phases with that stuff of falling in love with that, but that was a me joining Nightranger moment when I showed up with like a handful of pedals for the gig. The first thing Brad Gillis said to me, he came over, he said, "Ooh, you stopped at Guitar Center and bought pedals." And he said, "Look, man," he said, "we do fly dates." He said, "A lot of times we don't get a sound check." He said, "A lot of times you're going to like set the volume on your amp, the knobs where they're supposed to be, and we're going to get introduced and you're going to go on." He said, "The less you have up here, the less that can go wrong." And that was great advice.
Wow.
So,
And you just kept it ever since.
that's when a lot of my, plug and play mentality like took over. And like, unless you really need something, just make it happen with a good sounding guitar and a good sounding amp.
Yeah.
However, I mean, I'm a big fan of delay in the loop, obviously, like playing, although I don't usually have any delay on for my rhythms. If I do, it's a tighter slap just to widen it a little bit. But typically, like delay only goes on during leads, and each song with Whitesnake, I'll get the BPMs from Tommy Aldridge, and just make sure that the delay is synced in time. So if I do a gliss or slide off,
Right.
it's nice and in tempo with the song,
Yeah.
and I'll set how many repeats and how strong I want the delay to be for that particular song, and that's it.
I think one thing for playing with high gain, I reckon you've got to be careful because very like I love that high gain sound, exactly your sound really, where it's just that high gain Marshall sound where I think it sounds fuller. It fills the space up a lot more. Um, and I think you've mastered it because what a lot of guys do is they end up throwing too much in and it changes the genre of the music. It ends up becoming very frizzy sounding where you lose that bottom end, that real deep grunt. And so from my point of view, I think yourself, you've absolutely nailed the sound. You've hit the pinnacle of ticking every box. That classic hard rock sound is just you've nailed it perfectly.
I mean, I'm uncomfortable accepting that compliment, but thank you. I mean, it's I'm always a work in progress with everything I do. So it's as far as mastering anything, I'm yet to master any of this stuff, but like I'm always working at it.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of working at it, I noticed you've got your tour dates for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. That's a massive amount of shows you've got to do.
Yeah, I call it the Marines of rock. We it's not for the faint of heart. You have 8 shows a
Yeah.
week. So
That's
typically you have
incredible.
a single show on Wednesday, a single show Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday are two show days. So the shows are slightly over 2 hours, like maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes. And
Wow.
so by the time you're done, you're like, hey, I've been on stage 4.5 hours today, and then that's not including sound check or any meet and greets you have to do and things of that nature and additional tasks. So getting ready, getting dressed, and all that. So it's definitely a good like uh, stamina builder, right? Like so when
Oh,
I go out
yeah.
with Whitesnake and I play like 3 75 to 90 minute sets a week, it feels like I'm out on a Club Med vacation. Quite honestly, you know. But TSO will definitely build up the stamina, man.
Yeah,
Without a
no,
doubt.
look, it's incredible. It'd be great if something like that came to Australia because we're sort of starved for that style of show.
Yeah, I think there's been some attempts to take it over and do. There's been some spring tours in Europe and things of that nature. I think just as far as growing it, it's done so tremendously well in the States. It's something you can count on. I mean, we're one of the top Billboard tours every year here in the
Wow.
U.S. A
Geez,
lot of
that's
people don't
unreal.
realize just how successful it actually is, but we're filling arenas twice a day, and then with that, you also have to realize that we have two bands out at the same time. There's an East and a West. So we rehearse together and put the show together.
Oh,
But so then
right.
on those two show days, you're really talking about four shows are being performed in one day.
That is incredible. From a production point of view,
Yeah.
that's absolutely incredible.
So filling an arena four times in one day, and that's obviously to maximize the amount of shows that can be done around Christmas. Because if it was one band and people expect you to hit all the markets in the U.S., you'd be like, well, we got to start touring in like late August or something. Which
Yeah, yeah.
who the hell wants to go see a Christmas show late August? Yeah,
Is I actually discovered by chance, is it Kayla Reeves? Is that one of the
yeah,
people that sing? So is she part of your band that you tour with?
yep, yeah. Kayla's in the East Band. As am I. So
So
yeah.
I discovered purely by chance. It was an Instagram video that just came up as a suggestion, and I'd never heard of her before. And what an incredible voice she has! What an extremely talented lady.
Yeah, Kayla's got a really cool, gritty, bluesy tone, very
Yeah.
soulful singer. So um, we joined the same year, and she was just a kid. She was 17 when
Oh,
she
wow.
joined. So she was just this young kid. We were just talking about that the other day. I went, "Oh my gosh, you were just this little kid when you joined."
Wow.
I mean, I
The,
still think of her. I still think of her that way. She's like my touring little sister out here. She's 30 now, but I'm like, part of me still sees that 17-year-old kid that joined this band.
yeah, yeah.
So
Geez, and so you guys have been doing it for that long. Like, she
I've been
started.
yeah since 2010. So yeah, 12 years ago we each joined. Yeah.
Wow. And you're still packing out arena after arena twice a day. That's incredible. Obviously, it's testament to the quality of the show that you're putting on, that people just want to keep going and going.
Yeah, I mean, the production is the star of the show. Quite frankly, I mean, it's all of us come together with our individual talents and fill our roles, and we all have our little moments to shine in it. But the production is really the star. Like if you go to see TSO, you'll be like, wow, well, as great as all the musicians were, the lights and the laser light show and the pyro and the hydraulic lifts that were on and things like that really kind of steal the show. The video wall is like the width of the arena, and
Wow.
especially nowadays where that stuff operates on time code. You're talking like massive, massive lasers and lights all the way down to like 16th notes with the music. So
Wow,
it's
that's
quite
incredible.
remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah. And apart from that tour, is there any other in the foreseeable future of yourself coming to Australia for anything, be it with Whitesnake or anything at all?
Gosh, I don't know. There's been nothing really new as far as like, well, Whitesnake, we're just in a holding pattern. David obviously was unable to do the U.S. run, and we're just kind of waiting to see, what his plans are. And then anything else, you never know. I mean, I obviously just started up with Revolution Saints and have Iconic, and I do my acoustic duo shows with Brandon Gibbs, so there's a few options in terms of things that could potentially get over there. Yeah, yeah. We actually were in Australia right when COVID kind of exploded. I mean, we
Oh,
were just
really?
at the top of 2020. We were in Australia, and then had just gone to Indonesia and Singapore, and were set to go to Japan when it was like, guess what? Everybody's going home for like 2 years.
And do you get sick of the travel? Is it ever a thing of you get done with just being on the road so much? Or is it just a normal thing there? You're just happy to go with the flow?
I like it. I like it. I enjoy the whole experience. There's things like you realize you get good at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a good traveler.
Well, everyone's lucky for that, because obviously everyone gets to enjoy your music and your live shows. So, Joel, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you making time on your own, your Sunday afternoon when you should be relaxing before you start the next run of shows.
This is relaxing. This is just fine. Thank you. Absolutely.
No, I really appreciate
pleasure to meet, pleasure to chat, and
When I was doing research and trying to get a list of players together that I really thought that had nailed their sound, the one theme that always come up with yourself is no one had a bad word to say about you. Everybody was just spoke so highly of you and spoke that you're the genuine nice person of the industry. So it was a pleasure to be able to spend half an hour with you.
Oh gosh, well, thanks. Should I say something really arrogant and rude or something like that?
No, there's plenty of that out in the world.
No, I mean, I try to. I think it was a struggle for me to build a career, so I think that aids in keeping me grounded in terms of understanding that I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to like live my dream that I've had since I was really 11.
Yeah,
so
wow.
Not everybody gets to do that in life, so I'm grateful for it. And there's a lot of amazing players out there who are probably more deserving than I am of that, and they haven't had that opportunity. So I think it's disrespectful at a point not to appreciate the opportunity to do what I get to do. So,
yeah. And look, please keep doing it. The world needs more rock music, especially the way you do it. It's feel good music. It's you can turn it on. It sounds good. It feels good. So the world needs more of that.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, my intention is to just keep working hard. It's that daily thing, and see where it all goes. Sometimes life takes you to places you don't expect, so you just have to kind of like work hard and like ride the wave.
Thank you. I'll speak to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to check out any of Joel's work, you can head to his website, joelhoekstra.com. It's got everything there. He's done a couple of new bits and pieces with another band called Iconic that are all there. You can find the details about the Trans-Siberian Orchestra as well. I've got another couple of these coming up. I'm going to do my best to get them to you as fast as I can. They probably won't all be clustered together. I'll release them amongst other conversations as well. So you may have to go digging for the follow-up episodes, but they hopefully will all be there for you to go through and grab some information from at your leisure. I've said this before, and if you can do it for me, that would be great. If you know anyone that you think would like this episode, please do share it. It is the only way the show grows. You also can leave a 5-star review. I don't agree with the system, but the system is that only 5-star reviews count. So if you can, on your platform, please leave a 5-star review. It helps other people find it. It helps it get suggested to people that might be interested in it. But the main thing for me is if you can share it with someone you think will like it. You can find this episode, more information on this episode, all of the other episodes we've done, coming up episodes. It's all listed on the bumpinginto.com.au website. For people that are listening overseas in America and other countries, make sure that you have the .au on the end of the web address. You'll find us there. You'll find heaps of information. And we've even got T-shirts, so you can jump on there and grab yourself a Bumping Into T-shirt if you wanted to. Thanks very much. I'll catch you on the next one.